Hi, my name's Alestra, and I love housing in WoW. But even though I've played a bunch of housing games, I usually did so at a pretty surface level, and so I find that I'm still learning a lot when it comes to WoW housing. I thought I'd share some of my lessons, and I'd love you to come visit and join in with me as I do. These are 10 tips for getting the most out of the building controls we have to hopefully speed up your building process, and one bonus at the end. You might notice that I use a different keybind for remove decor than the default, which is R. And the reason for this is because sometimes I'm replying to guildies when I'm decorating, and I discovered that I was accidentally removing decor because I was pressing R to reply when I had an item selected, and it would remove the item. At first I had no idea what was going on, so I've changed it to D. And you can do this by going to Options, looking at the keybind, searching for Remove, and changing it from R to whatever you would like. If you're like me, sometimes you use your left mouse button to move your screen. But if you have a decor item selected while you're doing it, you can accidentally move it. So I've taught myself to not use my left mouse button to rotate, but instead use my right button. And then you can rotate in all directions, even if you have something selected, without any problems. Have you ever been lining up your decor item just so, and then it goes racing off in some direction? The easiest way to fix this is to keep holding down your mouse button and just press escape, and it will return right back where it came from. As long as you keep holding your mouse button down, you can use this to revert any change that you make in the advanced menu. To get the most out of movement controls, make sure you're adjusting your character for both rotating and dragging along the X, Y, and Z axis. You want to be at a right angle or perpendicular to the item. This gives you the best controls when making adjustments. Also, if you're dealing with really small items, don't be afraid to get up close and personal to really see what is correct for that item. If you've ever been rotating an item and you've rotated it so much that the numbers for the rotation no longer show, here's a trick to still get accurate rotations. You can hold down Shift while you're rotating, and it will increment 15 degrees for each step. You can also hold down Shift when resizing an object to increment in steps of 10 percentage points. When you're planning on rotating an item, start by aligning the rotation and the position of the item in the basic menu first. You can see me doing that here, and after many adjustments, I get the shelf how I want it to be. Because I aligned it at the start, it's ready for rotation. If you're rotating in the advanced menu, something to consider is that the yellow dot of the x-axis dictates the plane of the rotation in the z-axis, so you want to align that dot with your planned direction of rotation. This is a simple example, but applies whenever you're thinking about rotation and is especially helpful when things get more complicated. You might not have noticed this, I know I didn't at first, but WoW has a menu of hotkeys on the right-hand side of the decorating UI. These can be used both when you're in the menu for those controls and when you're out of it. I find that it can be really helpful because I can focus on the overall look of the object rather than having to pay attention to how I'm moving the controls. You can check the right hand panel for details, but to move up and down, you can use the page up and down buttons. Left and right are the arrow keys. Bigger and smaller are your square brackets, and rotating uses the comma and period keys. You can also change these in key binding if you prefer a different configuration. Speaking of hotkeys, there's actually one that isn't shown on the menu at the moment. It's there in beta, and it's a hotkey for switching rotation axes. By default, it starts off with the x-axis. When you press the hotkey, it moves to the z-axis, and then you can rotate with the comma and period hotkeys, and then you can move to the y-axis. To bind it, you can search for next rotation in key bindings. It's great for when you're trying to target a hard-to-reach axis, or when you're just confused about which axis is which. My next tip is also about rotation. I know it's a lot of rotation, but they really do help make things easier. In this case, it's about embracing the math of a circle. I know, but if you remember back to your geometry days, there are 360 degrees in a circle, and a breakdown that's familiar is dividing this into 4, where we go from 0 to 90 degrees, 180 degrees, to 70 degrees, and then back to 0 or 360. This also applies to other breakdowns. In this case, I'm creating a hexagon, and if I remember that 360 divided by 6 is 60, I can increment each of the rotations by 60 degrees to make them easy to line up. If you're not sure of the angles, you can also always Google them. As a side note, a rotation increment of 6 degrees goes into 360 very nicely, and it's great for spiral staircases.
And for our 10th tip, you guessed it, another one about rotation. We're going back to our hexagon, and in this case, let's say for some reason I didn't want the beams to be flat against the floor. I wanted them rotated on an angle. 45 degrees is nice and fits in that circle rotation really well. But let's say I've got these 5 here and I first positioned their rotations where I wanted them, and then I rotated 45 degrees. But let's say with this last one, I decided to do the 45-degree rotation first, and then do the positioning rotation. What happens is now it's very difficult to do the positioning rotation because the axes aren't aligned in a way that makes it easy. So you want to make sure you've done the positioning rotations first, and then do the rotations that will mess with the axes. I've honestly found it so challenging to make adjustments if I get it wrong that often I just start over again and reset the item in a better order. And that's the list. I did say that I would provide a bonus tip, and you've actually been seeing it throughout the entire video. It's to get a decorator toon. This character here is not actually my main toon. My main character is a Draenei shaman whose name is Alestra, but this little gnome is parked in my house to help me as my decorator. My other characters who are more leveled, have the rep and the resources, are the ones who travel the world, and it means that I don't have to worry about whether I need 5 chairs or 6 chairs, because I can just park one of them at a vendor and switch back and forth while I'm building. I will say though, while she's absolutely fantabulous, I don't know if I would really recommend a gnome. Every so often I do need to log onto a regular sized character just to make sure that everything isn't completely gnome sized. So there we are. I hope you've learned something, and if you have, I'd love to hear about it. And if there's some tips you'd like to share, I'd love to hear those as well. And if there's something that you'd like to learn in the future, feel free to share it and maybe we can learn together. Please do like and subscribe for more videos. See you later, folks, and thanks for visiting.